and welcome to the 20th episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today, as we always do, and as I always say, we have an amazing guest, but it's also a guest who I will be personally impacted by as he has been vlogging about his shoulder surgery. So amazing. I'm going to read you a little bit more about him and also try to give you guys some education about this type of surgery. One thing I learned was that more than 2 million Americans experience some type of rotator cuff surgery every year. According to the National Institute of Health, 22% of the population has some kind of shoulder tear. And by the time we reach our 80s, that number jumps to nearly 37%. So I figured this was something that is not only going to impact me, it could impact a lot of you. And what better person to talk to than Andrew Rockenfield? Andrew Rockenfield, he is a Air Force veteran, a YouTuber, and an IT professional. And he's been vlogging on his shoulder recovery since last May in an effort to help others heal. And I figured this was just an awesome opportunity to bring him to you and to learn some stuff in the process myself. He's not only that, he's a husband, a father of two, the head coach of the Alpine Development Team at Snowbasin Resort, head coach of a girls' basketball team, an IT professional who specializes in helping companies become more efficient through the use of technology. As he's worked as a police officer, he's been a personal trainer and the IT director of a large healthcare facility. He holds degrees in computer engineering, business, mathematics, certifications in IT, which is CCNP, MCCA. Coaching includes PSIIA Level 3, Children's Specialist 2, and USS Level 300. His passions include helping people improve themselves through education in health, nutrition, and fitness. He works out, he plays basketball, alpine skiing, electronics, movies, and spending time with family. And the biggest thing he's been doing lately is these vlogs on his shoulder recovery, and they're very extensive. Welcome, Andrew.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So I think what I want to do to start off this conversation is get into what happened with your shoulder and how this all came about.
Yeah, you bet. Before we go there, I just wanted to thank you for having me on the show. I've seen a lot of your episodes just recently, and you do have some amazing people on it. I think that you're doing an amazing job with your channel, with your podcast, and actually getting and helping other people, getting people to help other people. And I think that it's fantastic what you're doing. And by the way, kudos on your most recent accomplishment of Commander and the Navy. I think that's absolutely amazing. And my kids are Star Trek fans, and I say, hey, she's like Commander Riker. And they're like, oh my gosh, really? Like, wow, you're going to talk to a commander? I'm like, yes, I'm going to talk to a commander. So congratulations.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate that. Well, I think the first thing, that I wanted to kind of get into is what happened with your shoulder and how did this come about that you needed to go down the route of getting surgery?
Yeah. So, I used to be in really good shape when I was younger. I played college basketball, high school basketball. I played basketball after that, and I worked out quite a bit. I was pretty strong. I didn't run into a whole lot of injuries. When you're younger, you can survive that a lot easier, right?
Right.
And so I started working behind a desk, and my shoulders started rounding. You get this hunched over thing where you're typing all the time, and I was constantly sitting at a computer. And so I got fat and out of shape, and I looked at the mirror and I was like, I got to do something about this. So I started working out again. I had lost the fat. I started doing some different things. I'm like, I want to be more efficient with my time. So I'm going to try this new thing out there called CrossFit. And so I started trying CrossFit, and it was pretty awesome because there was a whole bunch of things that I've never done in my life that I wanted to start doing. And I had to learn in order to be successful at this particular sport. And I'm talking about things like bar muscle ups, ring muscle ups, doing double unders. That was so frustrating in itself. I'd never even done single unders for jumping. And then I had to learn how to do double unders. And that was like, oh my gosh, like crazy. And so I started doing all these things. Some of the other movements are overhead movements, specifically. And those overhead movements I'd never really done a lot of. I'd done the traditional bench press, squat, deadlift, bodybuilding stuff, global gym types of stuff. But I'd never really done those overhead types of lifts, like overhead squats or snatches, cleans and jerks, things like that, handstand push-ups. And so it got to the point where I started working on my strength to get those things, started working on my technique, and I got better and better and better. But, and I'll go into this probably a little bit later on why it happened. But what happened is that my shoulders started hurting. I started having issues with my shoulders. And for 6 months or so, I really kind of had to try to rehab my shoulders, and I started doing some things that were working specifically on my rotator cuff, muscles, tendons, things like that, the surrounding shoulder musculature. And it really helped. It helped like significantly. And I thought I was pretty clear. I thought I was, I've got through this. And I remember at the end of March, it was, we had this open workout in CrossFit. And it's called the Open 21.1, 21.2, 21.3, and 21.4. I did 21.3 and 21.4. 21.3 has a whole bunch of pull-ups, chest to bars, bar muscle ups, things like that. And then 21.4 is a complex where the last movement is to lift really heavy weights on your head, right, or a jerk. And I set PRs, personal records, in those things. And I felt really good. My shoulders felt better than they had in a long time. And then I went for a 3-day weekend. My daughter, she's a really accomplished skier at her age, and she was in a championship race in Grand Tardy. I went there, and I was one of the race coaches. At the end of the day, on the last day, we were just pulling down the B net, which is a safety net that we put on the side of the course, and we're rolling it up. I wasn't even on my skis. And I remember my boot skied down to one of the B nets, something that was sometimes with the season, and I tripped and fell with my arm outstretched over my head, and I fell into a pop. I was like, oh, good. And after that, it was just I couldn't lift my arm like at all. It was
wow,
just dead, And I remember I went into several different providers. I went into a PA, I went into an MD, I went into a chiropractor, went to a doctor of physical therapy, and I tried all sorts of different things, tried to do the same things that I had been doing that were successful for me before, and it wasn't working. So after a couple of months, I went in to see a surgeon, and I that's a whole other story in itself, but I saw the surgeon, and he said, hey, you have a full thickness tear of your supraspinatus, it looks like to me on this MRI. I had an arthrogram specifically. And I'm like, well, what do we do about that? He said, well, you have we can give you a cortisone shot and you can do some therapy, but he said, I give you about a 10% probability that you're going to feel better after that, especially with what you're doing and what you want to do. And he said, so surgery is going to give you about a 60% chance to get better. And he goes, but let's do what you want to do. And pretty much right away, I was like, I could just feel it. I just knew my body, and I knew that it wasn't getting better. And so not much better. And so I said, let's sign me up for surgery. And that's how it all happened.
Wow. Was it sort of like, did you dread it, or were you feeling like, it doesn't sound like you even tried to put it off, because I've had mine, my shoulder, and I think I only have a partial thickness tear. But as I'm learning, sometimes they can't see everything on the MRI. So even if they say that this is what they think it is, my doctor was explaining that once they go in, there's a lot of other things that they might be able to see once they do it. Did you try to put it off at all, or were you like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do the surgery because I know there's no other way it'll heal?
Well, I initially made the decision to take the surgery right away. But I always knew that I had like 2 months before I was going to go into surgery that I could change my mind anytime. I could just say no, so that's why I scheduled it right away. I was like, no, let's just put it on the clock. And that way I don't have to wait if I decide to go through with this. And through that 2 months, though, I went from yes, I'm going to do it to no, I'm not going to do it a lot. And matter of fact, the night before surgery, that's why I recorded it so late at night, because I still wasn't quite sure that I was going to go through it the next day. But ultimately, I decided to do it. And you're absolutely right too. That's one of the things that happened with me, is that through all this imaging, I had digital motion X-rays that were done. I had the doctor of physical therapy. I had an ultrasound. I had a whole bunch of imaging. I had a normal MRI and an arthrogram, which is basically an MRI with contrast.
Yeah, I
And
had that
so,
too. Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. And so, they have to inject a needle into the area that they want to image, and then it will hopefully show more of whatever that needs to be repaired. So, and that's basically what happened to me. And it was kind of interesting because I had two different radiologists read the report, and they were telling me that I had a subscapularis tear and an infraspinatus tear, but they didn't mention really anything about my supraspinatus. They didn't mention anything that I had any kind of biceps tendon issues at all. They said I had a focal tear of my labrum. They could see that, and they could see a little bit of the supraspinatus, or excuse me, the subscapularis, which is this guy right up in here, and your infraspinatus, which is more back here, where the supraspinatus is more in
Yeah,
this.
thanks for explaining. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when I went into my surgeon, though, he looked at the same exact imaging, and he goes, "Yeah, but the subscapularis and infraspinatus, that's not a big deal." He said, "But what I'm seeing that's not on this report is the supraspinatus." And that was, and he did a few tests right away, and I couldn't perform them. I just couldn't do it. And he goes, "Yeah, you've got a full thickness tear of your supraspinatus." And he goes, "So, so you're right. Imaging is a great tool. It's something that can definitely help, but it's not something that is going to necessarily 100% identify everything that's going on with your shoulder before they go in." And even once that he went in, he said, "Hey, look, you've actually got a focal tear of, so instead of the biceps tendon being straight and even like this from the muscle to the bone, I had a tear so that it looked like this. So it's kind of hanging on by a thread over here, and then it was thick down here on the muscle, but it was like on the bone, it was barely kind of attached." So he said that, during, and that wasn't identified by anybody. And so he went in, he said, once that I saw that, I needed to make sure that you came out of this and didn't have to go back in for another surgery and have this long recovery. So that's why that he decided to do the biceps tendinosis at that point as well. So, and then he did some cleanup of arthropathy, which is basically arthritis. I'm 54, I'm getting older,
Right.
so I have a little bit of that going on as well. And he actually did not repair the subscapularis or the infraspinatus at all. He just left those, and he stitched up my labrum a little bit as well. So I had a lot of stuff going on. A lot of it, I would say half of it, wasn't identified in the imaging. So you're absolutely
Oh,
right.
that's fascinating. So that's, and when you said that when you first did your video the night before, you were still kind of like, am I going to do this? Am I not? What made you decide to pick up a camera and start to document it?
Well, that's a tough one because I'm a very detailed person.
I can tell.
I love to learn. I'm an educator, for fun. I don't get paid to do a lot of the things that I'm doing for coaching. Now at Snowbasin, yes, I do. For running those programs, for the race programs up there, yes, I get paid for that, and that's my fun job. But all the other things that I'm doing, including this YouTube channel, I don't get a dime for. Matter of fact, I had to pay a lot of money to make my content be more helpful to other people. So
Right.
I've actually shelled out a bunch of money, and we could go with that a little bit. So that it does help other people. So the thing is that as I was going through all of this information and I'm trying to process it, I'm trying to understand. Okay, number one, what is a supraspinatus? What is an
Right.
infraspinatus? What is a subscapularis? What do they
Yes.
do? Where are they at? Why does it need to be repaired? All these different things. And then you start asking the questions, okay, well, what's this surgery going to look like? And what's my recovery going to look like? What are the timelines on these things for me to be able to get back to normal? And right now, I'm a shell of myself. I used to be like actually quite muscular, and in really good shape. I'll have to maybe show you a picture or something later. But I lost 6 inches on my right arm and over
Wow.
3 inches on my left arm so far. And I've gained some fat. It's just so I'm going the opposite way right now.
Right,
Um,
right.
but to answer the question, it was one of those things where I just didn't find the content that I was looking for. I found some content here and there, kind of splattered all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Some in reading form, some in a YouTube video type of thing. But then you had to listen to like a 50-minute video to get like this little pearl out of it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's not really concise. So what I had hoped to do is to say, I want to help other people be able to get this information a lot more quickly, a lot more readily, a lot more easily. So when I did that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get high production quality out because I had one arm, I was going to be in pain, and I had an iPhone 7 Plus. Those were the tools that I had. And if you look back at my first video, like you could barely hear me and you could barely see me. And but that video still has like close to 1,000 views now or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but the point is that I wanted to get this information out and give people the things that were important. And the thing to me is that I knew what some of those important things were to me before I had the surgery. But then I realized other things that were even more important, or other things I hadn't thought of as that I had gone through the recovery, which is why that it's always evolving and always changing. So
Yeah, it's so great to watch I was showing my husband a bunch of your videos last night, and I was showing him how, where you started and then kind of what you were able to bring into it. And it is clear that you're a lifelong learner like myself, and you just love information and learning. And I think that what you brought to the table that no one really had about shoulder surgery, is number one. Like I said, this is an incredibly common issue. I really didn't know before going into this how many people have shoulder issues, and people who don't even know they have shoulder issues may
yeah,
not feel pain, but still have an issue. But then number two, like you said, there wasn't anything on the internet that's from the perspective of a patient.
right.
Everything that I was seeing was a physical therapist, or they're selling their business and it's part of their business. It's just not about, well, what do I as a patient want to know? And what I love about what you do on your videos, and of course I will link to them in the description when I repost this link, is that you start from the perspective of the night before the surgery, and then you continue to document the journey through the weeks and the months that have followed, because you got the surgery in May. Is that correct?
Yeah, May 28th specifically. Yeah.
Right, right. And so you've kind of gone through a lot of different stages with with these different types of things that you've had to deal with throughout the process of having this shoulder surgery. And so I think the first thing I want to ask is, well, you go and you get the surgery, then the very next day you're able to film a video. How are you able to do that? And there's all these pain meds that you're on. You're dealing with so much at the same time. How were you able to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't expect that that was going to happen at all. I kind of gave my phone to my wife and I said, "You're probably going to have to, film me doing this, because I'm going to look really bad." And I was super surprised. I think that I attribute that to a few things. Number one is before that I had my accident, I was in the best shape of my life. I've been stronger in my life. When I was younger, when I was in my mid 20s, I could deadlift 625 pounds, I could bench press 405 pounds, and I could squat 575 pounds. And I weighed more then. I was in the 242-pound weight class when I was powerlifting back then. Um, but I'm nowhere near as strong as that now. But I could see my abs. I could do my laundry on my abs, and I was eating really healthy. I was doing a whole bunch of other types of things for the rest of my body, other than just those major lifts, that just made me. I felt great. I looked better than I probably have most of my life. And it was fantastic. And I attribute to all the things that I have been working on in my shoulders and all of the muscles and the tendons, all that strength. I think that really helped me, number one. Number two is that the surgeon that I picked, this guy, he's like got a lot of celebrities that have, had him. And this, just because you have a surgeon that has operated on celebrities does not make them a good surgeon by any means. But what it tells me is that when there's sports stars, specifically like skiing, because skiing is in Utah where I'm at.
Right.
Park City is kind of like the epicenter of the U.S. ski team. That's their headquarters. And literally this surgeon is about 300 feet from that facility, And so that's all he does is shoulders. He's a shoulder surgeon specialist. And I interviewed several. I went to talk to several before I picked my guy or my girl. And this person I just thought was like, yeah, they have what I need, right? So that was the second thing is, doing that. The third thing is that my surgeon said, we just switched to a new type of nerve block. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you. I could try to find out. I have another appointment with him next Wednesday if people are interested. But this type of nerve block, he said they switched to just recently, and that they've had a lot more success with it. And it actually lasts for 48 hours, like on the average. Because we're all different, and that's one of the things you're going to find is that just because that one person has done it this way, that doesn't mean even if you have the same exact procedures with the same exact surgeon, then that doesn't mean that you're going to have the same result, right? So the thing is that this nerve block really, I think, helped me. When I walked out of the hospital, I got out of my anesthesia pretty quickly. I think I was out of the hospital in 45 minutes after, I was put in recovery, so it was pretty fast. And we drove home, and I remember standing in my bedroom and looking at my iPhone and saying, I need to record something right now because I'm feeling really good. I don't understand why I'm feeling really good because everything that I've read, I shouldn't be, but I was. And so I attribute to those three things initially for how I was able to avoid having to take major pain meds. I never had to take one oxycodone or hydrocodone or any opioids whatsoever. All that I ever took on my initially for the first like 2 or 3 weeks, I think, was Tylenol and ice. I consider myself to be very lucky from all the stories that I've read.
Oh, me too. And a lot of people are talking about that ice thing. And I'm certainly going to invest in one of those myself. So the first few times as you're going through this recovery, can you move your arm at all? Or what was it like the first few days? Because you had your sling.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say you had your sling and you were not, and you had to stay completely immobile. So for people who have never had this kinds of surgery, you're pretty much, your arm is just in a sling for weeks, right? I mean, that's pretty much what your life was like.
Yeah. For me, I lived in a sling for 6 weeks. And it depends on the repair that you have. Depends on your surgeon and, the intent of what you're doing. My surgeon is conservative. And he knows that I'm going to push, and I want to push myself like beyond what most 54-year-old, people will do. And so, most 54-year-olds aren't doing handstand push-ups and jerking 200 pounds over their head, that type of thing, doing bar muscle ups as a few examples. So he knew that I wanted to get back to that. That's, probably the biggest reason that I had the surgery, other than just being able to function, So he was very conservative with my care, and he put me in that sling for the first 6 weeks. So he sent me home with some exercises, but it's just like shrugging your shoulders, basically. So you're not actually moving that shoulder away. You're not abducting it from, away from your body at all. You are literally just completely immobile for 6 weeks. And I remember the first 2 days, it was really quite easy, and I was surprised how easy it was. So I started getting a little bit cocky, And so I started using my iPhone just like this. I mean, I had it down here. Don't get me wrong. I was still in my sling, but I would put my other arm down here and I try to type with, my thumb and stuff. And just from that little thing, it like lit me up like a Christmas tree. I was like, oh my gosh, and I went up to about a 5 on the pain scale, whereas before I've been like at a 1.5 or something like that. And so I would caution people that, just don't get cocky if you're feeling good after the surgery. Just, chill out for the first couple of weeks for sure. The other thing that really got to me was the immobility. So when I actually started getting a different type of a pain that was going on, because that I was so immobile for so long, I wasn't used to doing that. I'm used to always moving and doing something. And I started getting this like kind of achiness because of that immobility. It was
Interesting.
Those were things that I wasn't expecting at all. So yeah. So to answer your question, after all of that, yeah, the first 6 weeks for me was completely immobile in a sling. And some people get out of their sling in a couple of weeks. Some people get out of their sling, 8 or 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever. And then there's a special abduction pad right here that you put underneath, so it keeps your shoulder a little bit elevated, but you're resting it, right? So you don't have to ever use it at all. And then he not only adds these shoulder shrugs, but you do some shoulder circles. You squeeze a ball, which is actually attached to your sling. And then we did passive range of motion. And I think that was probably the biggest help for me, because when I started with the passive range of motion pretty quickly, just low. But when I got to my physical therapist on day 6, then we started putting it into flexion, which is basically putting your arm up above your head. And most people say, oh, my physical therapy sucked because it hurt. Well, it can, for sure. It can be uncomfortable. But for me, it was like a relief because my arm was finally moving again. And it made me feel like $1,000,000 after I walked out of there. But yeah, for that first 6 weeks, it's a sling, passive range of motion only, which basically means that you can't move it yourself actively. You have to have somebody else help you move it, or you move it with a tool like a pulley or a stick or something like that.
Was it hard for you? This was also on your dominant arm, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, same
Yes,
with
it
me.
was. Yeah.
So, did you do any practice before your surgery about you using your left shoulder, your left arm for anything?
At first I thought about doing that, and a lot of people say to do that,
Right.
but I decided not to do that. I was like, you know what? I've got this. I'm just going to make it work. And there are some things that are definitely very different. Let's say you going to the bathroom, right? So
Yes,
that's a
yes.
little bit different for sure. Raising things up, doing everything with one arm. I started realizing that I was actually overusing my good shoulder because that I was using twice the load to pull a blanket over me or to move a pillow. Easy things that you would never even think about start like jacking you up. It's pretty crazy. I actually made a video specifically about that. So that's one of my later, I think it was my last video, in fact. So yeah, it's different.
Wow. And so, what has been so far the feedback on the videos?
I've been super happy about that. I've gotten nothing but positive comments, like nothing but positive comments, and I'm kind of surprised about that because I've watched a lot of YouTube myself, and I see that you get about 90%. If it's a really good video, you get about 90% likes and 10%, dislikes or whatever.
Sure.
I think I've only got like 2 or 3 dislikes, maybe 2. I think dislikes on all the videos that I put out over 30 videos so far. And maybe that's because people feel sorry for me. I don't know, but it's like I'll take it. But the thing is that I've had a lot of people. I've posted the videos, or I post a lot, like on Facebook, social media, shoulder surgery recovery groups, and some of those people are just fantastic. I mean, I love it. And there was this one lady, I don't want to call out any names or anything like that, but she runs the biggest shoulder surgery recovery site on Facebook that I'm aware of. And it's a really well run site.
Welcoming
And she
environment.
calls me up, like when I went to post my first video, she calls me up like on Messenger, right? And I'm like, hello, and we had a half an hour conversation and it was great. And she's like, hey, I just want to make sure you're legit because I want to make sure that I protect my users, that I protect all the people in this group because we are a
Wow.
serious group about serious things. We want to make sure this is all legit. We don't just want people posting in there. And we talked and she goes, no, she goes, this sounds fantastic. I'm really excited about this. And she actually made a whole section for me to post on the announcements tab of that. So like all of my videos are strong on that announcements page. So if you want to go in there and see it, and you can see all the comments just on those. And then they're also in the main section, which there are a whole bunch of different comments. But the feedback has been really good, that people will ask questions or they're constantly saying, hey, this is a game changer for me. This is like helping me so much. I really don't understand why that you haven't blown up on the internet. That this is gold. This is great stuff. And I never intended the channel to blow up or to get crazy or anything like that. And I don't know if that it ever will. It's like a very small niche, on the YouTube world.
Yes, it
Just
is.
shoulder surgery recovery by an individual, because there's lots
Right.
of doctors and other people that are talking about that.
Yeah, but there's no patience.
Right, exactly. It's very, very few of them for sure. And I don't think that I haven't seen one person doing what I'm doing.
No.
It's completely different. So no, the feedback has been really, really good. And that's what makes it worth it to me. Because like I said earlier, I actually had to spend like several $1,000s because I'm like, that iPhone video that I had in the very first one, it's no good. People aren't going to want to watch that if they can't hear the audio, they can't see the video very well. And so I got some new equipment, like I got some lights, I got a better camera, a better microphone, things like that. And then I started teaching myself how to learn how to do this stuff.
Right.
It wasn't easy.
No. And Andrew, you put a lot of work into this. So for those of you who haven't seen the videos yet, he has B-roll, he uses graphics. I mean, it is definitely a you use music, you layer it with narration. It's very well done. And I think that's the part that really impressed me, is that it's a testament not only to you getting through the shoulder surgery, but it's a testament that if somebody wants to learn how to do something, there are so many resources available to help people learn how to teach themselves and use the internet, use social media. There's a community of people. When I was starting my podcast, I had all these different podcast groups I went on. I would ask questions about equipment or about this or that. You and I went back and forth about YouTubing, even because my husband used to do YouTube, and then I started doing a little bit of YouTube. And so it really shows that you took what you did, what you went through, and you decided to use that as a launching point to not only help other people, but also at the same time help yourself learn a skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really interesting that you did. And is the most of the ways that you learn just by looking up things online about video editing and just asking people or posting in groups, or how did you learn how to do all this stuff?
Yeah, most of it for me was just the internet, right? It's reading, watching a lot. I watched a ton of YouTube videos. I love YouTube. I think it's a fantastic tool that you can go and learn. You can, and there's some junk out there for sure.
Of course.
But people will understand like what's quality and what's not, right? And who's sincere and who's not, that kind of thing. And so I gravitated toward those creators that I was like, hey, this person's sincere. And they have really good advice. They have good information to give. And I started using that to kind of up the level of my content a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I have a long ways to go. And I'm a very small one person shop, with very limited equipment still. But I went from an iPhone 7 Plus to an iPhone 12, and then I was like, well, that's still not good enough for the audio and for the lighting. So then I got some lights, Then I got a specialized microphone. Then I got a special camera, and then I got a gimbal for the camera so I could do the B-roll with smooth footage, and all the accessories that go on top of it. It got to be a lot, and I'm thinking like, why am I doing all this? I started thinking about that because I knew what my mission was, is to help other people. That's what I started doing for it. It wasn't to make any money. I never thought that I would make a dime off of this YouTube channel, and I haven't. But because it's such a small niche, I just wanted to make sure that I was helping other people find that information that I couldn't find as easily. I had to spend hundreds of hours. I would literally say I spent 100 hours like looking at information about shoulder surgery. And I got maybe, an hour or two's worth of like good information. So I wanted to truncate that into a smaller, better package for people. And so, as I was doing this, I love learning so much that I don't want to just half-ass something. I wanted to get in, and I wanted to do it to the best of my ability. And the best of my ability keeps, getting better, right? But I've still got a long way to go.
Absolutely.
To really get there. But, so the whole process it's evolved. It's taken quite some time and some money, but, those comments that I get from people are what make it worth it.
I agree.
Because if people don't know this about making videos, and I didn't either, but it takes about 2 hours for every minute of content that you put out, right? And so if I make a 10-minute video, that 10-minute video on the average is going to take me about 20 hours, because you have to write the storyboard, because you want it to be something that's meaningful to people. I don't want to just get up in front of a camera and puke out information. I want to get up and I want to have some thing that will actually help other people behind it, whether it's just following what I'm doing for that week, or whether there's an actual message. And I've kind of gone between those two things. And as that I'm making this, you're storyboarding something. And then after you storyboard it, then you have to kind of narrow down. You have to write your script, so to speak. And it's not that like you're reading a script necessarily. It's just that you want to know, like, here are the main points that I want to make, right? I want to make sure that I don't forget something that's important. And so that you get that, and then you set it up so you get it in front of your camera, and then you start filming all this stuff, and you don't get it on the first take. I guarantee you that. You have to record it over and over and over to make sure that you get it. And then you have the B-roll. So I started supporting it with B-roll, because when I'm actually talking about something, I don't want just like I'm right now, just for a person to listen to a 20-minute video with just me talking like the entire time. I wanted to have other things involved. And you'll notice in the beginning of my videos, I was talking, but then I started supporting it with B-roll, which is basically footage that shows what I'm talking about. For those of you that may not know what B-roll is. And so that it just made the content better, it just does. And it helps people not only just visualize in their head, but now they can actually see it. So you get the B-roll done, and then you have to do the audio. And then I didn't know about color grading. I didn't know about audio engineering. I didn't know, music into this? Yeah, okay, cool, and then there's the editing, and then you got to edit it all together. And then there's a whole process just of uploading it, and then writing like all your table of contents and the description of the video.
And your graphics and your thumbnail.
Graphics, exactly. Those graphics take a long time,
They do.
And then posting it to all the social media sites that on shoulder surgery, so people understand what it is. People
see it, and then interacting with the comments after.
Yeah, and interacting with comments. Yeah, I've got. And sorry for those of you that have written me in the last like 4 or 5 days. I haven't gotten back to you. Every single person that has written a comment on my YouTube videos, I have replied to. So, and every single person that has replied to me on my social media on Facebook, I have replied to those people as well. So, because that right there, that 20 hours to spend making that one video, that's what it's about, is so that it helps that person. And when they have a question, that's what makes it worth it.
I love it. I love it. That's what makes it all worth it. And I feel the same way about my podcast and about the stuff I put out on social media. I would rather put out one good post that I interact with for a very long time than just a bunch of one-way communications, because I know that interaction is going to be more meaningful, or I'd much rather spend a little bit more time doing not as many podcasts, but ones that I think are of quality and very intentionally thought through, and the guests that I think that are really going to provide a service, such as yourself, than just doing one podcast a week just to do a podcast a week. So I share your love and your passion for your craft, and kind of the thought and the work that it takes to do this. Where are you at now with your recovery, and where do you intend to take the channel?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything because I'm going to be putting out a video soon. And I love what you just said about that, because at first, the first week I was putting out a video every day. And then I started doing like twice a week. And then I got to once a week up until about week 17, which was my last video at this point. And then things started kind of getting more routine and more redundant, more the same. And so I've struggled because I wanted to put out content in the past few weeks here, but I've been thinking to myself, there's not really anything that is new and is meaningful. So I just want to put out a video to put out a video. I want it to be meaningful once that I do. And so I love what you said about that. As far as the YouTube channel, I plan to continue to put out videos. I don't know, like when something is meaningful, I'm going to put it out, whether it's twice a week or once a month or whatever it is, so that continues to help people. And I plan to follow my recovery, going from where I ended up in my last video all the way through getting back to return to sport. And I know that not everyone has that same goal of returning to sport and, being extreme like I am. But, I'm going to have that content all the way up until where they would want to be as well. And then those people that want to continue following after that, I know there's going to be, less people that are going to be interested in that stuff, but I plan to put out things that I've learned about health, about fitness, specifically when I lost 80 pounds, how did I lose 80 pounds? So I want to start putting out things like that can continue to help other people. How did I go from being fat to, my words for me, right, to having six-pack abs, and having, good sized guns before surgery? How did I do that? So there's a lot of young bucks out there that can do that, men and women, that just comes naturally. But when we get a little bit older, I think that becomes a little bit more difficult. And I've learned so much, even in the past 4 years, about health and nutrition. And I used to be a personal trainer, way back in the day, right? So it's just evolved. Things have gotten easier and more efficient on the way that you can do things. So I'm hopeful to put out that type of a content as we continue to go. And I don't know if that, I'm going to, again, I never set out to make this YouTube channel like something that was making me money. It was just a labor of love. And
so that's how I feel about my podcast.
Yeah. And so I can continue to do that. And if I can help some people, then it's worth it. I don't care how big the channel gets or how small it stays,
Right.
So.
It's all part of the journey. It's that part of that journey of iterative learning and just moving forward. I always say when I'm 75 years old, there'll be something else that I'm on some sort of a path for, and hopefully using whatever it is I can do to be of service and to help others, and to learn a skill or a craft in the process. So you clearly have that same mindset. By the way, what did you do in the Air Force?
I was actually a jet engine mechanic.
So, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, in a prior life, I worked on aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was an aviation electrician's mate. So you were a jet mechanic. Wow.
Yeah. I worked on the F-100 engines, which are at the time when I was doing it, there were 5 different modules, and those are the engines that actually go on the F-15s and the F-16s. And then I also worked on the C-141 Starlifters, which was one of the bigger cargo planes of its day. It's not as big as the C-5 and things like that, but yeah, it's a big one. And I got to take a lot of free rides in it, which was pretty cool with what I was doing. The pilots would take off, they do their training, and I got to tag along. I mean, I've always loved airplanes. And
no, that's
you can't
great.
see it right now, but my whole office is airplane themed, right? So have to send you a
very
picture.
cool. Yeah, I would like to see that. I worked on S3s. They were an in-fuel refueling. I mean, in-flight, an anti-submarine warfare aircraft, and then they just became the refueling aircraft on the carrier. And so I was also backseat qualified. I used to fly in the planes as well, and I was an air crewman. So
Nice.
funny, yeah. Wow,
That's
small world.
awesome. So see, I
Um,
can tell my kids that you actually do fly a starship, or at least should,
well, maybe not a starship, no.
right?
Well,
You'd have
Andrew,
to talk to Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos about that one, right?
yes, yeah,
They
of
need a
course.
commander, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think that they really want a public affairs communicator, but that's okay. um, is there any regrets that you have about doing this surgery and going down this path?
No, there's not. Where I was with my shoulder, it was tough. Like I said, I couldn't move it.
Yeah.
And so now I can. Is it perfect right now? Is it exactly what I want it to be? No, but I'm only like 5 months into my recovery, and these surgeries to get back to where you were can take a year and a half until you really know kind of where you're at. And not to get into another topic or anything, but I had an ankle surgery about 4 years ago, and my surgical ankle, the ankle that I had operated on, is now better in almost every single way than my left ankle. And
Hmm.
it was the same group that I had, with my surgeon. So I think surgeons are, the right surgeons, a big deal. But I know that in that recovery, I wanted it to be better faster, but it just took a lot of time. So
Right.
the best advice that I can give to people is to know that, number one, make sure you get a great surgeon and a great physical therapist, right? So if you can, any way, shape, or form, avoid surgery, I would recommend to avoid surgery. If you can rehab it, if you can go through that, I would recommend trying that first. If because sometimes you just know, or you suspect that this isn't going to
Yeah.
get any better for me, then yeah, schedule your surgery, get a good surgeon, get a good physical therapist, and just be patient. You have to stay really patient, and you have to stay really positive, because going back into the naval world or to the aircraft world, like if you're building a submarine, it takes a long time to build a submarine. But if you give it enough time and you do it the right way and you don't rush it, then you're not going to have any leaks in your submarine. Your submarine is going to be sound and it's going to move forward. And that's one of the things that my physical therapist and my surgeon both told me. They said, hey, we know you're going to get back there, but we don't want you to get too fast. There's no need to rush it. It's going to take time. And it's been really hard for me to lose all of my fitness. Like I can
Yeah,
see, I
you
used to
worked
have
on
a six
that.
pack, now I'm working on a
Yeah.
pony king, and I'm still eating pretty good, It's just because I haven't done a whole lot. And, I've already told you about my musculature, so that part has been the toughest part for me, is seeing
Mhm.
all that hard work go back here, so I know I'm going to have to get that back. But there's no rush, because the whole thing for me is that it's a long-term health thing, right? Even if I never work out again, I want my shoulder to be as good as it can possibly be now. And if I try to rush it and do things too quickly, or I'm not consistent in my recovery efforts, then I'm not going to have a good result. Just plain and
Right.
simple. And I could get injured really quickly. So I'm taking my time and following all of my protocols to the letter. And so far, because of doing those things, it's made an amazing difference on my shoulder.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Andrew. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we get off the call?
Yeah, if you're watching my videos, or if you see me on social media, reach out. I love to help other people. I love to help answer questions. I don't have all the answers, but I will give you the best answer that I have. And a lot of these things that I've gone through, I can help you through. And if you don't want to talk to me, you can always watch the videos that I have. But if you reply to me, I will reply back to you 100%. And also check out Teresa's stuff,
Mhm.
because It's pretty good. She has some really interesting characters on her podcast. I'm pretty impressed.
Well, Andrew, thank you. I try very hard to have a very wide array of different types of people. I like not being a niche. I don't want to be a niche. I just want to bring on people who inspire me and who give back and are of service. And you certainly are one of those people. If you just want to hang out on the call real quick, I'm just going to go solo and do a little quick closing, and then I'll be back there and just backstage here in just a second.
Awesome.
Thank you all for watching or listening, if you're listening through your podcast servers, to the 20th episode of Stories of Service. I have one more episode planned. Barbie the Welder will be coming on. You'll see more about that promo here in the next week or so. And then I will be taking one more break because I've got my shoulder surgery, as we just discussed. And hopefully I'll be able to get back into this, but going to take it slow and just see where things go. But thank you all for watching. And if you have any questions, you all know where to find me. Have a wonderful evening. Talk to you later. Bye.